have you watched a video of Jan Hoya, I think flashing this boulder? But what I remember happening in this video is Jan Hoya, who, if anyone doesn't know, he's king of competition bouldering at the time. I think this is right after he'd just finished a round of the World Cup, so in really, really good shape, very well practiced with dynamic movement and momentum and things like that from his competition bouldering. He went to Magic Wood, tried to flash Jack's Broken Heart, basically did flash it, did all the hard moves, and then found himself on two slopers facing the same direction with his heel out to the side, keeping him locked in. Then his heel slips, and as I remember it, he completely instinctively just like paddles the next 3 moves so he can get to the next jug, and he stays on, and he comes away with the flash.
Wow.
And so I was looking at that going, ooh, if he hadn't been practicing doing loads and loads of paddle dynos for competitions, I think he would have dropped the flash just then because his heel would have slipped and he would have had no skills to save it. Now I'm going to look up this video and see how wildly wrong I am about that. Jan Hoya, Jack's Broken Heart. If I'm completely wrong and this is not what happens in the video, can we delete all that section?
Yeah, if you're wrong, we have to delete the whole podcast.
The whole podcast, straight out. Okay, yeah. Cool. He's doing well.
Komm, Alex. Ja, Mann, komm, bleib dran.
Yeah.
Komm.
Ooh. Ooh. Okay, it's not quite what I said, but it's pretty damn close. Actually, what I saw was he had basically done it. He was in a relatively secure position. Then his hand slips, and he was about to swing off leftwards and completely slip off the sloper he had. But he reacts pretty fast. He tries to catch the hold he slipped off, and then simultaneously is going for a foot plant with his other foot. He manages to catch the foot plant first, which then allows him to get back to the hold on. So it's not the wild paddle dyno that I was saying in my head. In my head, it was that he like paddled 8 moves in a row, because that's what memory's like. But it is still a semi-decent example of what I was talking about. So, yep, the podcast is safe. We can keep this section in. It's all good.
Amazing. So I want to talk about the On a Hazelnut collab that we talked about, or that we introduced briefly earlier, and I'll link to that one too for you guys. But yeah, in that video, the thing that was really interesting to me is you were teaching her how to do these more flowy, fluid, dynamic movements on these complex slab boulders.
Yeah. And
the way you broke down movements, I thought was really interesting. As soon as you did it, I was like, oh, like obviously that makes perfect sense. But for example, going for a move without going for the move, like going for the move just to get your body in the right position and not even trying to actually stick the hold, and practicing the components of a move before trying to do something so complex and trying to put it together. Can you talk about that? Because once again, as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's so obvious. Of course we should do that. But I've been reflecting on it ever since watching that video and realizing I could probably do a lot more of that in my actual rock climbing. And I guess maybe I do instinctively to some degree, but there's so much value in like getting a position and just holding the 2 holds for a few seconds without trying to latch the next hold, or just trying to like see how far you can pull your chest into the wall if you're doing a big, powerful move without trying to latch the next hold, working on the pieces of it before trying to put it all together. But yeah, can you talk about how you break down movements and teach them?
First one I think is an interesting one to talk about is the idea of seeing movement in a higher frame rate. I don't think this came up in the video Anna and I did. So just talk about it quickly, because this isn't my own idea. This is something I read in, I strongly recommend it, folks, a really good book by Josh Waitzkin called The Art of Learning. He gives this really, really useful analogy where he's talking about how, I'm not an experienced judo practitioner. If I was shown a video of 2 experienced judoers, I don't think that's right. No, you can tell I'm not an experienced judo practitioner. So if I was shown a video of 2 hardcore judo people having a sparring match, and then suddenly one of them's on the floor, I, as an inexperienced person, would look at it going, wow, I don't know what happened. Like, 1 minute they were squaring off against each other, then the next second he was just on the floor. I didn't see anything. Whoa, amazing. Whereas an experienced practitioner would look at it and go, no. I saw like 100 things happen over a short space of time. He like reached forward, he grabbed him by the wrist, he pulled this way, then he pushed down that way. Like, they can see all the small components that go into making that movement happen. Now let's talk about dynamic movement. I think a lot of inexperienced climbers will see someone do like a pretty intense coordination move where there's like multiple moving parts, and they might look at it going, whoa, oh my god, like so much, they just did so much at once. Suddenly, 1 minute they were there, then they were over there. Whoa, amazing. Then as you practice with dynamic movement more and more, you start being able to see it in a higher frame rate, where you're like, no, they generated momentum in that position, then they jumped onto that foothold, they balanced there for a second, then they lost balance again towards that one, they pulled here, planted there. I can now see all of the steps that go into making that movement. So then when we're teaching dynamic movement, I think, yeah, as you say, a really, really useful thing to do with students is to get them to the idea that it's not that you're trying to do everything at once. That's really, really hard to do. But actually, very rarely in a dynamic move do you need to do multiple things at once. You usually need to do a sequence of movements with the correct timing in the correct order. And if you do the right sequence of moves in the correct order with the correct timing, suddenly it feels really, really easy. If you're concentrating on trying to do everything at once, it does not feel easy. So step one would be, let's learn what the individual parts of this move are, and let's practice each of those individually. So we learn that we're capable of them, we learn what they feel like, and then obviously once you've practiced each individual part of it, it's very easy for me as a coach to go, well, you've now done all the different parts of this move, so we know you're physically capable of doing it. You've done all the different components. Now let's start putting them together. And that it's also really good because I can then go at it from a point of, we're not trying to do it all at once. I want you to practice step one, which you already practiced, and then after you've done step one, add step two onto the end of it. And then, okay, great, you did step 1 and 2, now add step 3 onto the end of that, but don't start thinking about step 3 until you finish doing step 2. You don't need to be doing multiple things at once, just doing them in the right order. Also found a lot of the time with dynamic movement, the better you get at hitting certain dead point positions or certain body positions on the climb, the more opportunities you have to slow down and balance in different positions, which then gives you more time to think about the other things you need to do. So yeah, I do a lot of practice with dynamic movement, and one of the main ones I'll get people practicing is just breaking it down into smaller, more digestible chunks, practicing it in those chunks, and then building it into a longer sequence. Confusingly though, one of the other ones I struggle with teaching dynamic movement is kind of that idea we just talked about of if they're trying to think about doing a bunch of things at once, it's actually really hard to do any of them correctly because they're thinking about 5 different things. So a lot of the time with dynamic movement, one of the things I'm trying to teach people is just to confidently go for it and not worry about the details too much. So we often practice like different things in different sessions. One session it might be intensely looking at the details, and the next session it will be forget about all the details, assume your body knows how to do it, and just throw yourself at it with confidence, and then we'll make adjustments from there. Because a lot of the time I really do try and get people onto this idea of, even if you're not really confident with dynamic movement itself, everyone from a young age has been like running and jumping and catching balls and falling over and catching themselves, and generally our bodies are actually a lot more equipped with muscle memory, hand-eye coordination, all of these like pretty cool skills that happen naturally if you're not overthinking certain movements, but require confidence for you to allow that sort of thing to happen. It's difficult getting that working, and a lot of the time if I watch someone do a dynamic move and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, they're asking what they can do differently, and I can see like 10 small details which would all make a little bit of a difference. How helpful is it for me to point out all of those details to that student? That actually might not help in their actual performance of the move. What might be more helpful is me just saying, you were basically there. Try it again a little bit more confidently. Maybe go for a little bit softer over there and a little bit harder over there. Trying to pick apart the smaller details sometimes can be a bit of a tricky one. So I'm kind of contradicting myself in 2 different ones of, yes, definitely practice the small details, but also don't worry about the details, just go for it. Both will work. I think practicing both of those styles is kind of the more useful one.